Join former FBI senior forensic examiners Becky Passmore and Stacey Eldridge as they dig into the world of digital forensics, one bite at a time. Now leading their own consulting firms and educating the next generation of cyber sleuths. These badass babes of digital forensics bring sharp insight, real-world case experience, and a dose of humor to the bits and bytes that build today's investigations. From deep dives into business email compromise and ransomware attacks, Becky's specialty, to cracking the complexities of iPhone forensics, Stacey's obsession. This podcast delivers insider knowledge for professionals, students, and true crime techies alike. If you've ever wondered what really happens when the digital trail is all that's left, tune in and start parsing the truth.
Welcome back to Parsing the Truth, one bite at a time. We are continuing our conversation with Larry McClain this week in our Thing About Pam series. This is episode 4. If you haven't caught episodes 1 through 3, go ahead and check those out. We are starting back up with what did the police find out when the fingerprints came back? Tune in now.
And the phone rings like, yeah, the prints come back, and the suspect who was killed by the victim, because remember, that's what we think at this time, Pam Hupp, is a Louis Gumpenberger. Well, Gumpenberger's not Smith, right? That's a little bit of an unusual name. And it struck my head, like, I know that name. So I used our favorite non-forensic tool. I Googled it, and I realized I knew the name because years ago, he was driving intoxicated, Mr. Gumpenberger, crossed the center line, hit a car, which hit another car, which hit another car. That third car happened to be an FBI car. And so there was a civil suit, and field office called me one day and said, hey, we have this accident. The guy, his name is Gumpenberger. His vehicle's at this tow yard. Can you go out and take some photos? Because the name was so unusual, it stuck in my head. And then when I Googled it, we discovered immediately that because of that accident, Mr. Gumpenberger really had, I think, the functioning mental capability of a 12-year-old. He was still very childlike. Wow. He couldn't walk long distances. He really needed care. Bottom line is he was completely incapable of planning and executing the crime as was being presented to us. So that was our first, like, uh-oh. That and a 911 call. Something ain't right. But how do you know? Two stars collide. Think about it. What's except for cameras, best, easiest crimes to get away with? Easy is a strong term. But if you kill someone randomly that you have no connection to, you just pick them out of a hat, that's a hard solve. That's a hard investigation, or it used to be. So how did these two stars collide? How did they come together if this story isn't working out? And when we plot that geolocation information, sure enough, Google Earth opens up, and one little pin, tick, right on Mr. Gumpenberger's apartment, and was there for a period of time. So to make a long story short, we think she was driving areas, looking for someone to lure to the dust. She had a whole scheme. She was pretending to be a Dateline NBC producer, and she would ask them if they would come and record a 911 call, a fake 911 call as an actor, and they would be paid $1,000. The only reason we know this is she tried it before then, and the person who was going to be the victim got in the car and started to go with her, and then had her turn around, jumped out of the car and said, I want nothing to do with it. Now, when, I don't want to be involved in this, her spider sense went off. It was a woman named Carol Alfred, and her spidey sense went off, and she's like, this ain't right. This doesn't feel right. So she, Pam Hupp's driving around her neighborhood. She lives in a mobile home community. Pam Hupp pulls up. Hey, you got a minute? Yeah, I got a minute. How'd you like to make $1,000? Yeah, I'd like to make $1,000. Well, I'm a producer with Dateline NBC. I think she even used the real producer's name.
Yep.
Her own face from Betsy's. And, gets in the car. They begin to drive. She's really feeling nervous. In fact, I don't know if this comes out anywhere, but she told me that she grabbed a knife and had put it up her hoodie. And anyway, they're leaving the trailer, the mobile home community, and she's like, yeah, I forgot to do something for my dogs or lock my door or whatever. So they turn around, they go back. She jumps out, and she's like, you're a weirdo. Get out of here, lady. But she had a camera. And I think she points to the camera, and you see Pam like freaking out, back up and get out of there. But it gets the plate.
It's clear that video is still out there.
Now she called the county police department. She lived in the county, and they came out and took a little informational report like, yeah, that's weird. What? It was a road guy. He goes by the house, knocks on the door. No one's home. And then nothing ever became of it. There's no crime that's been committed. It was just some odd circumstances. Not saying either way whether that was right or wrong. But after the Mr. Gumpenberger's killed and everything's blowing up on the news and there's cameras everywhere, the deputy's like, oh boy, and he calls one of his detectives who calls us. That's how we put it together. And I happened to be there. We brought Miss Alfred in, and she was an incredible witness. And we did a photo lineup, and sure enough, she picked Pam out like that. But anyway, I kind of digressed, I think, on you guys a little bit. But the initial thing is, so we knew from Miss Alfred, we believed that what Pam's telling us is not right. She's not a victim. We don't know for sure. We got to still treat her like one. She's free. She's out there doing whatever. And so we're waiting on the search warrant. We plan the search warrant. And when that geolocation, that dot, that latitude and longitude dropped on Mr. Gumpenberger, I've told the story before, but I'll tell it to you guys. I'm in the lab, and it's kind of like this evening. So I'm sitting in there in the lab, and I've got 3 forensic machines. We're spoiled. Don't hate the player, hate the game, right? I've got like 2 Freds and another HTC. I've got machines going and laptops. So the big blue ball comes up and the pins drop, and then I look at the pin and I realize, I'm like, it's right on Mr. Gumpenberger's apartment. So Mr. Gumpenberger had this traumatic brain injury, and according to his mom, his poor mom, he worked at a place that gave jobs to people with disabilities, and they like pack boxes. But when he wasn't working, he just kind of sat out front, plastic lawn chair, just smoking all day. There was his chair. You can see it on Google Earth, I think, on my memory. And so now I got the pin right there. But my point to it is, I immediately looked at that. How did these 2 stars, completely unconnected, collide? And now I knew. And it was a moment. I'll never forget this. I got goosebumps talking about it. I leaned back in my chair, and it was like 8 at night or something. I was the only one that we worked.
Of course, you're the only one in the lab.
Yeah. I mean, we're working it nonstop. I'm working. I got to find some, make sure this is right. Is she a victim? Is she not? And I just sat back, and I hate to say I took a victory lap, but I did. I sat there, and for a minute, I'm like, I know. No one else knows. But I know. Shame, shame. I know your name. Like, you did
right.
this. And you went and found this guy, just like you tried to do to Kelford, and I can prove it. And I sat there for a minute, and then I picked up the phone and I called back to the PD, because remember, our lab is a joint lab, separate, in the same city, but different building, hosted at the county police department. And my lieutenant picks up the phone, and happened to be having a meeting on the case. They got the whiteboard and the strings, and they're war rooming it. We got people running everywhere. And I said, hey, where's everybody at? And he said, we're all in here. You've just interrupted, or we're having a briefing. Not a briefing I needed to be at because I was doing my thing. And I said, I'm going to send you a picture, because I screenshotted it. And, it's funny. I find myself getting quite emotional, but looking back, it was a very proud moment for me, because It was taken away, but you'll get it in a funny way. I said, I'm sending you something. I want you to open this email. And I sent that screenshot with that pin right on his apartment. And they knew what I was working. And he goes, yeah, hang on, let me get my email. And he wasn't, the lieutenant's man, not as tech savvy, he's trying to figure it out. And he clicks on it, and a massive cheer. I mean, just like, holy. And then my lieutenant said, about time you did something. Because, the joke was, we go to so much training. I was going, they acted like I never was there working. They were like, they'd call, because I didn't always tell them. They're like, where are you at? I'm in Alabama. I've been here for a month. Like, what? So my boss acted like I just went to training all the time. But to be honest, and they knew that's why we go to training all the time. Because when the big one happens, you're like, I know what to do. And so we could show that the stars aligned. And then really, we're talking about the digital evidence. There was so much digital evidence. I mean, so much evidence. It was a great team effort. There's physical evidence. There's just a ton of evidence. It would take days to tell the story, or episodes to tell the story. But that mobile device, because she either had it in her hand when she called 911, and when she was driving around, it was in that cup holder. And that was what allowed us to tie. And then just on the phone piece, because we could tie that in. And as soon as you see that we see her driving all over. And then we see her at the Gumpenberger location, and then immediately it goes from there right back to the house.
Straight to her house.
Yeah. That comes up. I'll get to that in just a second, but that's going to become important. But we can take her right to the house. We can track that, and that's going to become important for some video evidence if you help remind me. But the other thing was, now I had her drive around. Now we had Miss Alfred said she tried to get me in the car and said the same stuff, kind of thing. So now
That was 6 days before the murder is
Correct.
when she went and tried to get Miss Alford. Now we're going to share with you Carol Alford's call to the police after she managed to get out of Pam Hupp's SUV. And we're also going to share the video footage from her security camera system.
And I was just out with my dog, and I had a lady drive by my house. She waved at me, and then she drove across the street into the court and come flying back to my house. And she asked me, she says, "Do you babysit?" I said, "No, I don't like kids." And she says, "Oh," and she's like, "Well, I'm from Dateline, and we're paying your neighbors, driving through your neighborhood to pay your neighbors $1,000 just to do a sound clip of 911 recordings," which didn't match with anything with what she asked me about babysitting. Wanted me to actually get in her car, not tell anybody where I'm going, or bring my cell phone, and drive out of this neighborhood of ours to make $1,000 to do a 45-minute 911 soundbite for them. She seemed really creepy. So I got in the car because, I know martial arts. I can defend myself against this stupid lady. Got in her car, and then when she's like, "Oh, we're only going a block or two over," started to leave my neighborhood. Oh, crap, I left my door unlocked. She drove me back. I came in my house, and I went back out. I'm like, "I'm sorry, I can't help you. I have to go pick up my son from work." Then she's going to come back to my house. Wanted me to get in the car to drive me down to St. Louis to supposedly pick up my kid, who's actually down the street at a friend's house. She's driving around my neighborhood trying to pick up people. Is she currently in your neighborhood? She's currently in my neighborhood, and I have her and her vehicle and license plate number on my security system. Okay, that's why I had her pull my jersey. My name's Carol. I actually had her pull into my driveway so I could get this stuff on my DVR recorded security system, because if somebody goes missing in my neighborhood because of this, at least we'll know who did it.
Yeah. So now what can I do with my search warrant? I can do a piggyback. I can expand that time frame. And I expand the time frame, and she spent a lot of time driving around these lower socioeconomic areas. My assumption is she's trying to do the, "Hey, I'm a Dateline NBC producer," and lure them. But the one thing I kept laughing about is that she kept going to, she loved Dollar General.
Oh my
Dollar
gosh.
General, constantly like, "Dollar General, here's another Dollar General. I'm plotting Dollar General, Dollar General." And one of our detectives, not a cyber guy, but on the team, Rusty, he kept hearing me talk about another Dollar General. She loves Dollar General. And he ran down to Dollar General with another detective. And what they found was, several days before the homicide, she had purchased several things that then show up. The most important one is the knife she batted away was a very odd, weird, cheapo knife. Only Dollar General sells it. And so he put
Wow.
that together with the geolocation. We were able to tie together from geolocation, not only Mr. Gumpenberger being picked up and going, but also her going to Dollar General, purchasing the knife and the other things. And that was just all tied together by incredible investigative work by our team, that hearing me talk about Dollar General, and going down there and putting all that together. So
That's
that
great.
went that way. And then the other thing was, when I say digital evidence, you should go ding and hear the bell. So you heard the cell phone. She calls 911. Got a cell phone. Ding. Now I know Cloud. Cloud's going to be associated cell phone. Ding. I said she's driving around in GMC Acadia. Ding. Why? Entertainment center. The car was brand new at the time. This is not easy. But I found a GMC master mechanic in our county and had that thing removed by a professional GMC master mechanic. And because Burla wouldn't support it at the time. We're talking about the infotainment center being removed from the vehicle. We didn't have the capabilities. We had Burla and all that, but it didn't have that capability at that time. That was shipped off to Quantico, and contractors working up. Quantico worked at it. They couldn't do it. I had that master mechanic also remove the OnStar and ship that off. They don't keep anything worthwhile at that time that played out either. So that was like a wah wah. But I'm telling you,
I was
we did
hoping you were
all.
going to say that you found something amazing with
No,
OnStar. I was waiting for it.
So, we did
But
this.
sometimes that's the way it goes. You think, yeah,
Right.
there it is, and
And
nothing.
well, maybe we can't get it. We don't have the ability. Doesn't mean we can't maybe a year from now or 2 years or whatever. But then the other thing too is we did do another search warrant on that phone because remember when I initially did the phone, I did it under consent and we handed it right back to her. And then I did all my search warrants. But now that we know,
Yep.
so we spent about a week. I mean, nobody slept. It was really, I'm really proud of everybody. And you'll see this in law enforcement. You guys have seen it, but we were making people go home and they were mad about it because they were just falling asleep at their desks, like, go home, get some rest. They didn't want to leave. They didn't want to miss anything. But once it took us about a week, but we put it all together. And then we had a big meeting with the prosecutor. And this is, this is one of those points of my career I look back on. And I love the cyber game. I love digital evidence because we walked through the whole case. And my prosecutor who got it is in this meeting. Everybody's there. And he looked at me and he goes, Larry, how confident are you? And he goes, would you do this? Like, absolutely. So, to be invested and asked from the prosecutor who's putting his name on it, and what he's putting his name to is we got an arrest warrant. So about a week later, I had went to the courthouse, got another search warrant for the phone, right? So what happened is we waited for her to leave her house because every morning she got up to get a soda. I think Renee Zellweger kind of makes a thing of the soda all the time, which is accurate. And she's leaving to go get her soda, and we took her down on traffic. They put her in handcuffs. They put her in the back of the patrol car. She wears up almost immediately. And then I go right in there and grab that Samsung that I had had before back out of the cup holder to rework it again. Nothing really incredible to say about that second exam, just more of the same. So she didn't use that. But I will tell you that with this case, if you look at the crime scene photos that they took of that house, she has an office. And in that office, in front of the desk, is the dirty carpet with that clean square right under her desk where that tower is missing. So there's a tower that was there. It wasn't there when that homicide happened. And I always think about that tower. Man, and I did work and try to track down where it was and spent a lot of information, but it's gone to history.
Yeah. Yep. That's interesting that the computer tower was gone. I mean, there's a clean spot on the floor. Clearly there's an imprint. Where did it go?
Yeah, there was a little bit of information that went to Best Buy for some service, and then might have went to her son's house, and we went there, and so I spent a lot of time chasing this tower, just never materialized. Just
for sure. Yeah. So would the capabilities of today's tools have made a difference in your case or in this case?
Well, it would have cut into my overtime because it would have made it much.
For shame.
Oh, sorry. No, it's all about justice. First of all, search warrant return capabilities, the ability to process cloud data within forensic tools. Of course, mine is Axiom's my main driver, and that's where I work. So using the warrant return capabilities to ingest it. But it's not new, but I don't know if you guys are familiar with Axiom Route View.
Yep.
Yeah, Route View. Think about what I did with Google Earth. I could have just done with Route View, and I could have recorded it, and I could have sped it up and slowed it down, and that would have made a world of difference in dealing with that return. I haven't mentioned, like, we did the cell tower records, any electronic search warrant you can think of. I only mentioned the highlight ones, but I wrote specs paper. I killed a lot of trees. Sorry. Yeah, the tools today, certainly Route View, but any of the tools processing capabilities, because at that time the tool was Internet Evidence Finder, and people might not even know that, but that's what Magnet started with before Axiom became a full forensic platform. So not sure what I don't think I missed anything. I'm very confident that I think I'd have just been a lot quicker. I would never went to trial, as Stacy mentioned at the beginning, with the Alford plea, but boy, it would have made for better demonstratives and even better report because it has the reporting capabilities now built in with our exhibit builder tool. So any of that would have made it prettier, better, quicker. Is really where it would help. And ingesting those search warrants would have been huge because, back in the day, we'd just get the disk and we'd have to look at the spreadsheets and then find something. So I wouldn't have to deal with all that.
But I also wonder if one of the main differences, because you were doing it so long ago and you approached it first as, I'm going to take some pictures of this phone. And so you saw all the blue lines and you're like, that's weird. What is that? And so, that might have been the starting point. And it seems to me it was for you to, like, dig in deeper and be like, what are all these blue lines in the driving around versus today where we would have just done the extraction?
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you think you still would have picked it up, or it wouldn't have been so fast on the uptake that
Yeah,
happened?
I would have. I'll be honest with you. I probably should have just extracted it immediately. I did the photos first, and I actually manipulated the screens with the finger to
Yep.
photograph the screens before I extracted. Because at that time, and it depends on phones today, can still extracting the device can take time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But I did the photos first because why do you think I did that? We'll make it a quiz. Why do you think I did that?
I think time was of the essence.
Because it was on consent. And what you
Yep.
said, consent withdrawn. I want my little. So I was racing. I mean, I was screaming back to the lab. And again, we treated her as a victim, but time's not on my side. So I wanted to get what I could get, because if that phone was extracting if he said no, then I'd have been nothing. And we might not have ever gotten justice. Who knows? So
let's talk about the consent more. Even in today's world, would you have done it the same because of the consent? And
Yes.
how long was that extraction going to take?
Yeah.
You'd do it the same.
No, again, there's plenty of investigators and examiners out there who might want to argue that. Based on my experience, I would do that again. But the problem with that
you
is,
learn through your cases what is important and what is it's almost like volatile versus non-volatile, and what I need right now to make my case if that consent is pulled.
it's all a chess game, because what was the danger that I suffered was that someone could have sent a kill signal. I was in a Faraday environment, right? So we could argue that might not have been a good move, but it is the move I made, and in retrospect, I would do the same thing. That's my call on that. It's all a chess game. We all make decisions. Some work out, some don't. Luckily, most of them do. But technology has certainly changed, and abilities to extract. And so those tools, certainly if I'd had a gray key, it went straight on there. I think it would just made it faster and easier, to be honest. No indication as I do. I have another case that I always think about, that if we wouldn't have had the capabilities to have digital forensic investigators, examiners, we would have never known this was a murder first. It would have just been seen as a crime of passion, which is a very different type of case, right? But the point is that I always think about people like you guys who are out there that have the capabilities and the intelligence and the knowledge. And we have a lot of great agencies that are doing that. But think about the areas in this country that don't have that or don't leverage it. I'm telling you, there's a lot of murder firsts out there that are probably treated and then prosecuted as murder seconds, and nobody ever knew it was premeditated because they didn't leverage the digital evidence. So, whatever scenario, you could make this for a lot of cases. Yeah. It bothers me sometimes thinking about agencies that don't have that ability. It's like, I will tell you, I don't know why this is kind of spinning there. I love when we have defense experts involved. And here's why. The only appeal on a digital forensic case I ever had, and it was at state level here in the state of Missouri, it was on a child sexual assault material case. And the defendant appealed the case. He was prosecuted for possession of child sexual assault material, but he appealed the case because he said, I asked my defense attorneys to hire an expert witness for me, and they never did. That was overruled. They didn't sustain that. And I was a little surprised. I thought, seems like a legitimate argument. What they did was the attorney's nephew, who was an IT help desk guy, they brought him that. You've probably seen this before, I'm sure. And it was really almost criminal, right? That they did that to their client. They brought in the IT help desk guy. He didn't even know the terminology. So I still think gaps that I see, because I'm out there every day and all kinds of labs, is we're not always leveraging the cloud, and we could. We don't have defense experts involved that are going to help make these cases solid.
You mean like the fear of a qualified defense expert to make the law enforcement side take it to the next level or go all the way?
I love them. I had one case where there was a defense expert in the area that sometimes, if I'm honest, would overextend himself, and he would get pressured to say things by that attorney. I felt they were just.
That is very real. I am asked to say and do things all the time, and it's a constant push and push back.
Well, this guy I think got pushed
into
it, and I'd have to write a report. And I'm like, quit making me write all the reports. But that was only one time. In the other cases, literally, if you just follow the ones and zeros, and you can repeat what I did 10
Yep.
times, I think, I don't know if you guys would agree with this, it might be a bad way to say it, but I think a defense expert, their worth is helping their attorney's client get a good guilty, right? And help actually with the client control, like convince the client that, look, no, the lightning didn't strike the phone and download 500 images of CSAM or whatever it might be, right? So it makes, when we don't have that in place, it makes the system weaker.
Yeah, I mean, Becky and I say it all the time. The facts are the facts.
Right.
That's what we're here to
Right.
share.
And that's why the
that's what we do.
geolocation information, and I really think there's a lot of great evidence. It's not just the digital, because we got really lucky. But I don't know, I wasn't there. But I think when the defense attorney sat down with Pam Hupp and tried to, move her towards his Alfred plea, if that's how that went down, pretty sure the digital evidence, the geolocation evidence, was like, how are we going to overcome this?
Well, and with the geolocation evidence, did you see it? You eventually got to go further back in your search warrant to get more data from Google, but did it show her going to Carol Alford's house then? In
I
that,
don't
do you
remember.
recall?
I don't remember that. I'm sure I looked at that. I did just not sticking in my head that that's where I'm back. I'll tell you the challenge that I had. This case had so much attention. It was so important to the community. And then later
Yeah.
went kind of nationally viral, that this technique that I used for the geolocation, I had heard about. We're kind of glancing over that because there's a lot of that now. But I could only find one other case where this had happened before, where someone wrote a search warrant. I was like the first kid on my block. And this wasn't a geofence. It was just, here is the phone, here on the Gmail, give me the geolocation. That was really groundbreaking. We're talking about an older case here, folks. And I found one guy who wrote a paper from a forensic standpoint, really kind of at a surfacey level, about geolocation information in Google. And he kind of was billing himself as an expert for hire. And I called him and I talked to him, and my prosecutor, basically think of Matlock. The guy knows more about DNA than doctors do, right? But one time I was explaining to him, and I think I'm good at this, explaining some forensic principle in this case to him, as I would a juror, and he goes, Larry, you're trying to explain, how do you say it? You're trying to explain auto mechanics to the Amish, is exactly what he said. And I'm like, okay, Phil. But Phil was like, no money, no expense. I've got unlimited budget. We'll throw whatever money, hire an expert. And so I talked to this guy one time, and he would not call me back. I think he was like the reluctant astronaut. He was good at writing white papers, but he didn't want to get on a stand. He would not call me back. The other piece of digital evidence we should mention, too, is that when I had the geolocation information, and after Mr. Gumpenberger was picked up and went directly back to where he was murdered, again, we plotted all this. And there was a donut shop. Why has it got to be a donut shop? I don't know what it does. And it had a camera. And that camera catches that GMC going past, but, briefly. And if you look at the picture, and it's out there in this, it's a little grainy, it's a little shadowy, but in the passenger seat, you can see a male subject, I believe. There's argument about this. You can see Mr. Gumpenberger sitting in the passenger seat, and he always wore the same distinct baseball cap for the University of Missouri or Mizzou, and you could see the M on it.
Mm-hmm.
That was massive. That was like, here it is.
Wow.
This is bam, we got a picture of this guy, but it's grainy, it's shadowy. Well, I did reach out to probably the top national expert on video stuff at the time. I think he's still out there. He teaches at Quantico all the time. We'll just leave it at that. And he said, yeah, you can't say it.
Mm.
He didn't believe. His expert opinion was, you cannot say that is in fact him. But I'm telling you, again, this is why you got to be careful. You got to follow the evidence. You got to do the right thing. I look at it and I'm like, that's him. You can see him. We all said it.
Yep.
But I couldn't say it from a technical evidentiary standpoint. It was just, I still believe it. But so we never used it. They never came up in the case.
Well, and if it would have went to trial, I mean, do you think you could have said, like, there was definitely a person in the car with her?
And yes, and we might have went there. It didn't become a need. But it's one of those inside baseball that video, that very brief second, that image was days of work and a lot of argument. But that's part of making the sausage, right? Not a bad thing. But as an examiner, I was feeling a little pressure. I know what everybody wanted me to say, as the expert witness, I can say
Yeah.
That's the thing you have to think about.
all your
You
ethics.
know, as the expert, what can I say? What are the facts? What am I willing to go on the line? Because it's my butt up there in the
Yeah.
chair in front of everybody. It's
Yeah.
my name. What do
And
I want to say?
and I'm not trying to make it sound like they were really pressuring me too bad, but internally I did feel a little. But in the end, you follow your ethics.
Mm-hmm.
It was an easy decision to make. It's just a lot of disappointed faces. It's nice to be the hero. I was a hero when I had the geolocation, but that one, yeah, just like we can't go there. And
Right.
everybody accepted it, and that was, they had faith in me and my abilities. Like I said, I had spent a lot of time testifying in a lot of cases as a regular detective before the cyber stuff, so it wasn't as big an issue. And I don't know if this to our listeners is confusing because it's a hard story to tell. We're talking about initial homicide and a wrongful conviction, and then we have another homicide where the victim actually then turns out to be a suspect who lured the guy to his death, which is connected to the first one. But the bottom line is, for our agency, for this high pressure kind of case, having that ability for someone who really understands the digital overlay of the crime scene, the digital crime scene, and is able to say, okay, just give it to me, or here's what we're going to do, and be able to leverage that is huge. It's a big investment for an agency, not only in tools and time, but like I said, I was away at a lot of training, but sure enough, when we needed it, we needed it. Interestingly enough, I was there 10 years at Cybercrime Unit. I managed that unit, and I was the forensic manager of the unit, and we had some massive victories, right? And then I retired from law enforcement, and now, working here at Magnet Forensics. And there's been a couple chiefs since I left. The new chief came out with a policy and said, no specialty assignments over 5 years. So the guy who replaced me, after 8 years, they pulled him out, and they haven't replaced him. And it is the second largest city in the metro region. They have no forensic examiner, even after this story. And you have to look and like, are you nuts?
5 years is where you start to feel kind of comfortable. Like,
Maybe.
I tell
like
people
that's where you
the
bring
first 2 years
confidence
you're useless.
in. 5 years is where you've got some confidence.
You got to be having a lot of cases at 5,
Yeah.
to feel that confident at 5 years.
Yeah. So sometimes, you get these chiefs and their political point or whatever. I'm not banging on the chief other than to say that after all those immense successes, you're going to like, yeah, we're not going to have one right now. We'll just let the other people in the group work on it. And here was the power, having someone in a task force. It was a regional group, but I promise you, if the people signed my paycheck called, guess what was going to happen? I'm running. Right.
Mhm.
I was going to go like this. Well, it's right in front of me. I'm working on this case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
I did wonder, did you ever serve any of the search warrants out to her cell phone provider to do anything with like the cell phone tower data or anything like
Yeah,
that?
did that. Not only did our cell phone record, we actually called in the CAS team. FBI
Okay.
heads that CAS team, and there's a phenomenal guy that was in St. Louis at that time. And if you've never heard of the CAS team, for our listeners out there, FBI has specialists in cell records, deal with call detail records. They even go like the tower schools, and I mean they're getting crazy
Yep.
deep into this stuff. So we did bring them in. I did it myself, and then I found out about the guy. I think he'd just gotten to St. Louis actually, and then he did that work as well. So yeah, we did that.
That's awesome.
Presumably, like the cell phone tower data was lining up with what you were seeing with Google, which
Yeah,
which you were
exactly.
also seeing with the security camera footage that you could pull up.
Right. So yeah, you think about it, phone, cloud, vehicle, so infotainment center and OnStar, I'll add that. All of this camera footage that we have in there, the cell tower data, there's this huge amount in just managing that. I had a CSAM case one time, child sexual assault material case. It was 22 terabytes. Now, I'm not saying it was all allocated, but just the management of some of this volume of data and all the moving pieces. Now, I'm not saying this case had 22 terabytes. It did not, but there's a lot of moving parts. We called them affectionately back in the days. This is probably changed binder cases. You open your third binder. Now we got a fourth binder. You got all these binders stacked up. And sometimes just handling the digital evidence is a whole management tool unto itself.
Well, it's also important to share what you're finding. And sometimes as you're going along the route, and now maybe it was venting to you, But when you kept mentioning the dollar stores and the other detective was like, ding,
Yeah.
and he ran off to the dollar store, and then you were able to tie the knife into the crime. Even
So
better.
I'll tell you another one. I don't think I've told this one before. I'm pretty sure. So for you, Stacey and Becky, I'm going to tell you this part. So this was an interesting one. Phil, the guy, auto mechanics to the Amish, was just really on this whole kick of money's no expense. We're going to spend whatever. And he said, Larry, he had this big idea. Here's what I want you to do. This is like a year later. He's like, Larry, I want you to buy that exact cell phone and you retrace the route, and then we'll download it and be able to show that as an exemplar, show a demonstrative to the jury, because we're getting ready to file, that you could say, see here, this is of that. And I'm like, are you out of your mind? Why did I say that? It's not going to look anything like that. How many Wi-Fi points are gone? How many towers heads have been moved? I mean, like, what? I mean,
it needs to be done within days of the crime or whatever, the driving, whatever it needs to.
A year later, that would have been a nightmare, because again, it's a mesh network. How many Wi-Fi points are gone? How many people,
Well, I hate to one-up you, Larry, but somebody asked me if I had done it 7 years later once I was hired. And I was like, no. And that was on the stand. And I just left it at that, because I was like, whatever I try to clap back with is going to sound like me going, that's not my job. And I didn't want to sound like that.
But we spent a lot of time as examiners trying to explain these things. And so I'm like, well, Phil, that's an interesting idea, but let me explain why that's probably not the right choice for us. In the meantime, my head's going, are you crazy?
Well, they had a couple of the detectives, when they were investigating Russ Faria's alibi, they drove the route, and they surmised he should have arrived home like 9 to 15 minutes faster. So he clearly had like that 10-minute window to commit the crime. And it's like, well.
Yeah, that's a big aspect on the first homicide. He had multiple witnesses. He's at a game night that they had, they're having a game night, and then he goes home and he actually had the receipts. He stops and gets a cheeseburger and a soda or whatever.
So hungry he ate at Arby's.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And so, again, I don't want to be hypercritical, and this has been several years, but I think if you look at that case, I think they were making some stretches to make that fit, because it's pretty clear it would be pretty hard in the time frame that he had to make it home and stab somebody that many times, But so the interesting thing about the Gumpenberger, well, it's all interesting to me, but the Gumpenberger homicide, showed that Pam Hupp really is a killer. At least one time. She killed Mr. Gumpenberger. She had to put a lot of planning, premeditation. There were a lot of moving things in that. So we know she is certainly capable. So based on that, there was a overturn up in Lincoln County where Betsy Freya was killed. A lot of people were unelected. A new prosecutor came in there, and he really got elected on that, I'm going to make this right. And so they have issued charges on Pam Hupp for the murder of Betsy Freya. However, it keeps dragging on, and that's how it works sometimes. But next year, at some point, Pam Hupp is supposed to stand trial for the murder of Betsy Freya.
Yeah, it's scheduled for the summer. They have a jury selection date, and they have a trial date. So we'll see. Speaking of that, do you think for any reason you'd be called to testify in the Betsy Freya murder case if that goes
the guys who are working on that cold case, I know the people, but I make sure not to have any conversations. I haven't talked to them. I don't ask anybody about it, just in case I could be called. I can't imagine being called on the homicide of Betsy itself, because I did the 10 computers, which had no evidentiary value.
Right.
But if there is some nexus, and they might not allow this, to try to show that she is capable because she did this other murder, that might bring me in. But that's the only nexus that I can think of right now. I really don't think I will be. But, I've said that before. And, I've been here at Magnet Forensics for 7 years. But, just last year, I got a subpoena for a case from, a million years ago that you're like, what? You got to send me that report, So I still get called sometimes, but so it's possible.
Well, Larry, thanks so much for joining us and sharing your time and your knowledge. It's been just insightful, and just hearing about all the, trails, digital trails that you followed, and the light bulbs that went on. I always love these stories. They make what we do for a living so much more fun. So we appreciate you and we appreciate your times. Until next time, stay safe, stay sharp, and as always, keep parsing the truth one bite at a time.
If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow us to get notified the next time a new episode drops. If you can do more, head on over to parsingthetruth.com and donate by clicking on the donate button. Parsing the Truth is a nonprofit organization, and we are raising money to send a new digital forensic examiner to IASIS training next year in Orlando. Thanks.